Hey Valley Middle, welcome back to another G67 math video. Tonight we're going to be learning how to multiply both positive and negative fractions. Before we do that, let's start off with the trivia question of the day. Who is this great boxer? We'll be back with the answer to that and a drop-in guest who will share that and a few other tidbits about that as well. All right, officially tonight our target is I can multiply positive and negative fractions on 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's do this thing. All right, we have the fraction 4/5 times a negative 15. Well, I could guess 15 because 4/5 is almost a whole, so it's going to be like a little bit less than a negative 15, but that's not the problem. We actually have to solve this. So let's just take a look at this and let's break this down. Well, the first thing we can do is we can take negative 15 and just make a negative 15 over 1. Now we have a regular fraction to work with. And just like when we multiply positive fractions, when you have a negative fraction, you just multiply straight across. Straight across. So we have 4 times the negative 15 is a negative 60. We have 5 times 1 is 5. So now we have a negative 60 divided by 5. We can simplify that by dividing the numerator and the denominator by 5, and we end up with a negative 12 over 1, which is really just a negative 12. Now my estimate was about 15, but a little bit less than a negative 15 was pretty close, negative 12. And you could pop that into the calculator as 0.8 times a negative 15 as well. Sometimes I even flip this in my head like I was doing ahead of time just to have an idea, is my answer going to be correct or not? What kind of a number am I looking for? All right, let's take a look at the math word of day. We've got the numerator, and of course we have the denominator. The top number here is the numerator and the bottom is the denominator. I did want to talk a little bit about negative fractions. So we have a negative 1/2 here. Well, sometimes the negative symbol will appear up top here by the numerator. Sometimes it'll appear right even with the fraction bar. Be very clear. The entire thing is negative. It's not a negative 1 over a positive 2. This is a negative 1/2. This is a negative 1/2. This here is a negative 1.5. It's a negative 1 and a negative half. Or if you would like to think about it this way, it's a negative 1 plus a negative half. All right, sometimes that gets a little bit confusing. All right, quick run through on some other rules we've been working with a lot. A positive times a negative, of course that's a negative. A negative times a negative is a positive. I like these two. An even number of symbols, either negative or positive, is going to give you a positive. If it's an odd number of negative symbols, then you're going to end up with a negative answer. So, all right, let's take a look at our first problem of the day. We have a 2/3 times a negative 1/8. So the first thing you do when you're going to do this is, you reduce them if possible. I think it's important to do. So in this case here, I had 2/3 times a negative 1/8. I was able to divide the numerator by 2 and this denominator by 2. It just gets it into a much more workable numbers. So now I rewrote that. When I multiply straight across, I have 1 times 1 is 1, and I have 3 times 4, which is a negative 12. I can't reduce that any further. I'm sitting here at a negative 1/12. Now, if you didn't want to reduce it, you could always take and just multiply straight across. 2 times 1 is 2. 3 times 8 is 24. You end up with a negative 2/24, which when simplified is a negative 1/12. A couple of things here to remember. Reduce if possible ahead of time. Multiply straight across. Make sure you rewrite that problem. I think that's really important so you have a clean piece that you're working with, a clean set of fractions. And then check to make sure that your answer has the correct sign. I'll do one more and then I'll cut you loose and have you do a couple of pause problems. So we have negative 9/10 times a negative 5/6. All right, well, I set it up negative 9/10 times a negative 5/6. And you can see that I've already crossed out some things here. I've reduced. I said I divided the numerator here by 3 and the denominator by 3. And over on this side here, I divided this numerator by 5 and this denominator over here by 2. So when all my reducing is done, I'm looking at a negative 3/2 times a negative 1/2. Multiply straight across, you have a negative 3/4. Let me slip that negative symbol in there. Oh, wait a minute. Is that a negative or not? You have a negative times a negative equals a positive. Almost got you there. All right. And again, if you don't want to reduce it, you can multiply straight across. Negative 9 times a negative 5 is a positive 45. a negative 10 times a negative 6 is a positive 60, and then you're sitting at 45/60. And when you reduce that, you divide by 15, you would end up with a positive 3/4. Just double check to make sure that that answer has the correct sign though, all right? Gets a little bit confusing. Sometimes you get so wrapped up in the process of multiplying and reducing or simplifying, you forget to check the sign. All right, here's your first problem. Go ahead and give this a try. What is negative 7/8 times 4? I see dead. All right, let's just see how you did. Okay, I set it up negative 7/8 times 4 over 1, just made it into a fraction. I reduced, because I think that's simplest here. Divide by 2, you end up with 7/2 over 1, or times 1 over 1, which is really a negative 7/2. I did it the other way in the bottom if you didn't want to reduce it. Negative 7 times 4 is a negative 28. 8 times 1 is negative 8, so you have negative 28/8, which when reduced, both answers are negative 3 1/2. Let me just check to make sure I have my sign correct. I have a negative times a positive. Yeah, that's going to be a negative. All right, one more pause problem, then I'll get you the ticket and the trivia. What is negative 6/9 times a negative 1/3? Go ahead and give that a shot. All righty, let's check my work here. I set the problem up. I cross-reduced, leaving me with this new problem of negative 2/9 times 1 over 1, which is negative. That was awesome. It just turned out to be a positive 2/9 because I had a negative times a negative is going to give me a positive answer. And that is it. All right. Here are your 2 ticket to the show problems. Please make sure you show your steps. Watch out for the negative symbols there. All right. Let's invite my son Connor, and he's my guest speaker. Come on over, Connor. This is one of Connor's favorite athletes. Connor, who is this dude here?
That's a picture of Muhammad Ali standing over Sonny Liston after their rematch fight in 1965. It's widely regarded as one of the most controversial fights in boxing history, and the whole thing you can watch on YouTube for about in 5 minutes, and I highly recommend if you got a chance.
Give me a recap of the fight quickly.
In the first minute of the first round, Muhammad Ali knocked down Sonny Liston with a phantom punch that no one actually saw. And a lot of people speculate that he took a dive because Liston owed a lot of money to the mob. And so some people call it, but then after he was knocked down, he was gotten back up and started fighting again when they called the fight.
Okay, sounds like a controversy. All right, and for those fans who had other little trivia questions there, his name is Muhammad Ali. He was actually born Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. on January 17, 1942. He was a great American Olympian and professional boxer. Actually, one of the most touching moments in Olympic history, I thought, was when he lit the torch. He was suffering from Parkinson's disease at the time, but he was able to light the torch as an older senior citizen. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. Appreciate it. Have fun.